There is a deep irony here, with Joey Fatone of NSYNC fame partying it up at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago, taking in the president's own words at his estate, and performing the band's hit song, Bye Bye Bye.
Hey Kamala, what are we going to say to Donald Trump in November?
Bye, bye, bye.
While that didn't happen, this did.
I'm in a tinted dark green four-door Nissan Frontier pickup truck. Multi-million-dollar music mogul Lou Pearlman entered and appeared before Chief Judge Francis Tidinko Gatewood on a motion for removal. Pearlman is the man that architected the popular boy band craze of the late 1990s, notably by managing NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. He is wanted in the state of Florida on federal bank fraud charges and has evaded authorities for the last several months. Deputy U.S. Marshal Richard Lumagi.
As of 0600 this morning, a flight came in from Bali, continental flight, and Mr. Louis J. Pearlman.
Lou Pearlman, whose first cousin is Art Garfunkel, one half of Simon and Garfunkel, was a boy band mogul. He created the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, Fatone's band, not to mention LFO, O-Town, and the career of Aaron Carter. That was after he jumped from one business to another, say a helicopter commuter service, a charter airline and aircraft leasing business, and finally a blimp advertising business.
Unfortunately, he had put so much gold leaf on the outside of the blimp that it crashed in New Jersey and only made it a couple hundred yards.
Only one aboard, the pilot, unhurt. A gust of wind reportedly hurled it to the ground, damaging its landing gear.
What does Lou do? The blimp cost maybe 5 figures. Reportedly, Lou has insured the blimp for millions.
The Jordache blimp would have killed most businesses. But Lou Pearlman is not the kind of person who gives up.
He creates this company called Airship International. It's a publicly traded company. He has shareholders in everything.
I think when he got people investing in him, he had a pool of money to keep an appearance now like what his business was doing was good. But what he had was a pile of investor money that he bought a Rolls Royce with and a penthouse apartment that made the investors feel good.
With all that being said,
This is Kristen St. John, and here with you on the Channel 20 News with the New Kids on the Block.
Hey, how's it going? Here we are.
on a charter flight, he ran into New Kids on the Block. The light bulb went off.
I mean, not to mention, okay, there's a tinkle to the cash register, no question about it. Unbelievable. So what'd you do? I said, I think I can do that.
Emulate that. He founded Transcontinental Records and lived life to the fullest without a care in the world for accounting. Luxury cars, jet rides, I mean, the whole nine. He was also a master of deception by any means necessary.
Schemer and liar. That's probably the best way of summing up his personality. It's not one thing. You know, he made up so many stories over our friendship.
Thus, in Florida, he would go on to create the Backstreet Boys, and they do show after show after show. But here's the thing. Something was off.
When he signed a record deal as a manager with the Backstreet Boys, he not only made himself the sixth member of the band so that he would get paid what they got paid, he also paid himself as the manager.
It's true. And when they just started getting comfortable, here comes NSYNC. This came after Mickey Mouse Club was canceled, meaning Justin Timberlake was there for the taking. NSYNC would sell in its first week 2.4 million copies. That was a record for 1 week sales in the United States. Although they hated their rival, they would find a common enemy, Lou Pearlman.
Lou Pearlman took advantage of young men and stole tremendous amounts of money. Lou wanted more from those young boys than they were willing to give. He wanted them to love him. He wanted sex with some of them.
The Journal News would go on to report that NSYNC received their first paycheck after wild, and I mean wild amounts of success. And that check was for $10,000. Chris Kirkpatrick would be asked one simple question by fellow bandmate JC. How much did you make in one calendar year as a waiter with Outback Steakhouse? That got them talking.
We were living off $35 a day per diem.
At the height of his fame, Lance Bass says he and other members of NSYNC were making less than minimum wage, despite being one of the most famous boy bands in history.
And this would sadly be repeated in practice.
You know, our bank accounts are nothing, and our managers and especially him, his bank account's growing. But
could you tell at the time that you weren't getting what you deserved?
Absolutely.
Yeah. JC would go on to say, "It is a picture of an unscrupulous, greedy, and sophisticated businessman who posed as an unselfish, loving father figure and took advantage of our trust." Here's another part about this. The Orlando Sentinel would report even Pearlman's cousins were defrauded by him. So the Backstreet Boys would settle in the year 1998. NSYNC left for Jive Records, which was the home of the Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears.
Bass says Lou Pearlman, the man behind the magic, scammed them out of millions. When NSYNC wanted out of their contract, Pearlman sued them for $150 million, but the judge sided with NSYNC. Bass says they eventually settled with Pearlman out of court.
A documentary would be released on Netflix, and co-executive producer Michael Johnson of Dirty Pop, the boy band scam, would go on to tell Netflix.com, and I quote, "We realized that the scheme that eventually funded these boy bands had started decades prior with partners that stretched from New York mob families to former Nazi pilots. In the end,
Transcon was a con all the way through. Transcon Airlines had no airplanes, had no employees, had no revenues, had no contracts with airlines."
Pearlman's childhood friend shows how Pearlman was able to perpetrate a con by using a Model 747, a real airport, and some deceptive photography.
We never, ever flew on a transcontinental airplane. We would fly to different places over in Europe, and we'd always be on these Delta flights, you know, in coach. And I always thought it was weird that someone that was in the airline industry couldn't help us out a little bit getting to places.
About 8 days after I opened up our investigation, Lou Pearlman fled the country.
And what happened next? He would be arrested in Indonesia and turned over to the feds. From there, Pearlman was sentenced to 25 years in prison for swindling investors and major U.S. banks out of more than $300 million. I'll break that down in a second. Via the Times, Pearlman, at the time rather, was 53, pled guilty in March to charges of conspiracy and money laundering in connection with a Ponzi scheme in which he used fake accounting documents to lure people to invest into companies that existed only on paper. The prosecution would allege Pearlman scammed folks out of some $200 million. The banks would be $100 million. He would die behind bars. All that brings me back to Joey Fatone, because once more I reiterate, there is a really, really deep irony here.
Donald Trump hired my small business to design a clubhouse for the Trump National Golf Club. Trump, in a meeting, made this big circle and wrote, "Love over here."
Because Donald Trump has put forth the same business tactics.
I sent a bill. It wasn't paid. The Trump organization said they would meet me at the clubhouse. There were probably 15 Trump organization people. They were going to offer me way less than half, barely a little more than a third of what we had built. I felt humiliated because here I was in the ballroom that I worked so hard to design, and they basically ganged up on me. I didn't feel that I had a lot of choice but to accept their lowball offer. So we sent that invoice, and it wasn't paid. I went and I met with Mr. Trump in his office, and he said, "You know, I really don't think I should pay anymore because I spent too much on this building." I had already accepted less than the total monies due to my firm. And he basically said he only wanted to pay me half of that amount. It almost put me out of business. We had to max out the credit lines to keep the little ship afloat and pay the rent. And I made virtually zero money for a couple of years. and lived on meager savings that were supposed to be for my son to go to school. His definition of winning is making sure the other guy loses. And that way of doing business is just not very fair to the little guy.
From architects?
Kevin Nash today told me a story about going into the venue that used to be the Taj Mahal, mentioning Trump's name and seeing the bartender roll his eyes. And the bartender told a story about his father was an electrical contractor, worked hard his whole life to build up that business. And then when Trump did not pay him for the work he did in the Taj Mahal, and the man was unable to fight it because he didn't have the resources to fight it. Trump knows that the people, honest, hardworking contractors, don't have the resources to fight him in court. And he bankrupts them. Their dreams disappear. That's not standing up for the working man.
To bartenders and more.
If we did a good job, we would get paid.
He says Trump owed him over $1 million, and he wasn't alone. Rosenberg says Trump didn't honor the contracts of over 100 contractors who helped complete the Taj Mahal.
The man didn't pay us because he didn't have the money, bottom line. I said, we want to get paid. He says, well, how can I stop this meeting? I said, it's relatively simple. Give me a check.
After several rounds of negotiations, Rosenberg says he and the other contractors settled with Trump for less than what they were owed, with devastating results.
Some went bankrupt, some lost their businesses.
In addition, no legal action would ever be taken against Pearlman for sexual assault, but a 2007 Vanity Fair expose would reveal allegations he had taken some of his relationships a bit too far. While leading teens through the early years of fame and fortune, some said he would show them pornos, jump into their beds naked to wrestle. Another allegation was that boys were leaving his bedroom late at night, buttoning their pants. I mean, do we really have to do this?
The president says his relationship with Epstein was no different than anyone else in their elite circle.
So my question to Joey Fatone is simply this. What gives? You escaped this. You sued this. You wanted to get as far away from it as possible. And now that it is right in front of your face, you cannot see the double standard.